In 2002, I got an email from a place called the Centre for Care for Survivors of Torture, which I didn't know existed, and the person who worked there, Mike Walker, was looking for choreographers and dancers to come and work with what they call their clients. And they sent an email to every dance company in Ireland at the time asking could anyone help. And I emailed back and said I would be very interested in talking to them further. I didn't know what I could do for them or what they were exactly looking for. Was it a performance? Was it a workshop? And I teach workshops as part of our ongoing work with the company. We do workshops in association with a performance, or we go to schools or to dance colleges, and I tailor it according to the needs. If they're professional dancers, there's one type of workshop. It's usually about my workshops are about my work and how I make my work. So my work is non-narrative, and the workshops come from things that I learned, particularly from the postmodern choreographers and theatre practitioners in America. People like the Living Theatre, Meredith Monk, both of whom I've studied with and have been very closely associated with. And my teacher, Pablo Vela, who works with Meredith Monk and had worked with Bread and Puppet Theatre. And what Pablo Vela taught me when I was a student with Dublin City Ballet in the 80s became the basis of how I make my work and how I approach my work, which is non-narrative, which in Ireland is we're a country of narrative text, written playwrights, drama, storytellers. So I try to get away from that. I try to not make the story the center, but I use personal material from the backgrounds of the dancers. We use elements, be they numerological things like ages, names, alphabetical schemes, and we construct these abstract structures. And sometimes within that, very personal, very human things happen. And in a way they're more powerful because they're not burdened by having to tell a direct narrative story. And that's how I've been working for a long, long time. So I said to him, this is what I do, and I have a workshop that I could tailor to the needs of the group. I didn't know what is a torture survivor like. So I did email exchange and some telephone conversations, and finally in May 2003 I went to Spirazi, which is the Centre for Care for Survivors of Torture in North Circular Road. It's a big old sort of house, and it has some large reception rooms, kind of like a typical Georgian drawing room, which are used for classes, talks, and they offered me one of their larger rooms to try a dance workshop. And there was this group of people, different ages, some very young, some middle-aged, many different ethnicities. Some people were black Africans, some people were what you call Mediterranean looking, some people I couldn't quite locate where they were from. They were all cheerfully chatting away, sitting down in chairs, and I asked Mike, I said, is this the group? And he said, that's the group. So I thought, aha. So I asked him, was there anything I needed to know or do or say that is a special protocol? I was terrified because I teach a lot of dance workshops with different types of people in different contexts, and I'm very, very good at mixing with people, and I'm very good at relating to people in different cultures. I speak French, I speak German, I speak some bad Spanish, so I'm a good communicator, but I thought, what should I say or do that is special or particular? So he said, the thing I could not do was ask what happened. Because for a lot of what they call clients, they're in the process of being put together. They have been violated. They've had some appalling cataclysmic thing happen to them or to people around them. So they're recovering. And they may look fine, but they're not fine. And then they may not look fine and they're doing better. I learned in time it's very difficult to read how a trauma survivor is doing. They have, people have their own ways of recovering, if they recover. And I remember what the director said later that year at a public meeting where they were showing things on the UN Day of Torture Survivors, which is the 26th of June, he said, the people here are survivors of torture, and it is the Center for Care for Survivors, not victims, but survivors. How I make material is often based on personal identity and heritage, and you maybe take something like your middle name, or you take your favorite color, or you take some very ephemeral element and you make it very, very important. And other things are channeled through that. So what I said to the group, there were about, I think, 10 or 12 people on the first day, and I said that my name was John, I was a choreographer, and I had a dance company, and I made very unusual work that I never told stories. I used elements of material and things that the dancers gave me. I said I was very happy and very honored to be with them. I knew that they had had long and difficult journeys to be in that room and in that place. So I did in the beginning some very simple exercises that I had learned from an American choreographer, Anna Sokolov. She was a real revolutionary of modern dance in the 30s. And she taught the choreographer Pina Bausch later in New York in the 60s. And so I did a couple of Anna's exercises that I learned when she worked with Dublin City Ballet with us in the 1980s. Raising your arms. And I worked in a circle because it was non-hierarchical. And I had this woman who was like a big African woman with lots of kids, and then I had this skinny girl who looked like a gymnast. I had this other big man with these huge eyes, and he just stared into my eyes, and we just did these arm exercises, reaching and breathing. And Mike from Spirazzi, he said if I wanted a therapist to come into the room with me, they could get a therapist. And I felt I wanted to start on my own with them, and I would see how it went. So I said I'd rather start alone, but they told me down the corridor, third door on the left, if I need someone, there's someone there. I felt in a way not exactly out of my depth, but I'm not a therapist, I don't have any training in these kind of things, but the work, the practices that I studied are often very therapeutic and very helpful, about well-being and about trust and about listening and about living in the moment. And I always had to go one step behind them in the workshops. So they taught me, I wasn't teaching them. And then we started to do a bit of a yoga stretch and a warm-up, and suddenly this young man came in. He looked like he was about 15 years old, and he looked like a professional dancer. He was skinny, and we were sitting down on the ground with our legs open in second position, and he sat down in this split second position. And he looked like some sort of a dancer in a European ballet company or something. And I thought, oh my God, he's a professional dancer and he must be a friend of someone else in the group. It was Friday and he was late. Turned out he was from Sudan, and he had been at the mosque because it was Friday, and he was late coming back, but he came in, joined in. And then we continued to work. Then I saw he did some things, and he was obviously not a professional dancer, but he had the most extraordinary facility, these skinny legs, and this strange, interesting body, very, very interesting as a dancer. And we continued, and then we started improvising with our names, and I was also learning their names, and everybody had these extraordinary names from...
That was complicated.
Yes, beautiful Iranian names and different African names and different languages. And they all had their mobile phones, and they wouldn't let go of their mobile phones because that's often their link to home, their only link to home. And suddenly the phone would ring, and they would leave the exercise, pick up the phone, and they were speaking often in halting English, and suddenly they spoke a dialect, some African dialect, and their whole expression changed, and the real them came out in their language. And then they put the phone down, sorry, and they'd come back and start exercising again. So I thought, let's try anything, something, to make something even 5 minutes long. So some people didn't want to be in a performance, they were interested and amused by the dance, and then of course my dance is this kind of postmodern, strange thing, and some people maybe had a concept that it was going to be, I don't know, an Ethiopian is going to do something from an Ethiopian folk dance, then a person from Kosovo will do a Kosovar little dance, and we'll all learn each other's dances. Or some of the people thought, oh, it's going to be like, I don't know, Michael Jackson video or something. What do I do? And there was me doing my things and my breathing and these things. But I was trying to work out generating movement, and I was doing the kind of work that, that I do when I'm making a work. And what was interesting was I didn't feel I was doing it like Mother Teresa or for a charitable act. I was genuinely fascinated and stimulated by what they were doing. And then I asked the Spirasi people if they would mind if we tried to make a piece. And they said, go ahead. If they want to do it. And we'll support you, we'll back you up. And so then there was this Arts Council application for a body to commission an artist. And I got them to commission me to make this piece we called Fall and Recover. And Fall and Recover is a technique invented by Doris Humphrey, the modern choreographer, and it's this idea of movement taking place between equilibrium and loss of balance, and I thought we'll eventually think of another title. But then it started to happen, and I couldn't think of any other title, and they liked this title because they said, we have fallen and we are trying to recover, this is our life, and we want this title. And once again, I worked then with two professional dancers. I wanted two dancers, a man and a woman, to come in with me, to be in the inside, to, if they needed support or if they needed help remembering things, or also for different issues because of things that people had been through. We had to have a woman in there who could maybe be along with the women, and a guy who wasn't me who was in there. So I got two dancers who were very dear, trusted dancers of mine who had been through a lot with me, Philip Connaughton and Aisling Doyle. And we went and we worked initially in Spirasi, so they were in a safe home, and we started to make this work. And I was using all the things that I had seen them do, and I knew that Kiribu did this beautiful thing with her hands and her eyes closed serenely, and she was doing this thing. And I knew that Sebastião was doing these beautiful things, and like a bird, and that the Sudanese boy could jump like a deer. And I thought of all their talents, and I thought of different things, and the rehearsals were busy, but they were also fun. And then more people started to come in. And I also got this idea, because when they were speaking their own languages, they were so alive. So we made this line we kind of called the Tower of Babel, where they one by one spoke in their own language. And I also had this idea of the journey, and that they had all been on a journey, and one of the things was walking and sweeping through the space and passing. And the following year, 2004, we performed Fall and Recover in Project Arts Centre in the Cube, and it was going to be for 3 days leading up to June 26th. And Marion Finucane's radio program heard about it and had me on, and they came and interviewed some of the cast, and it created this phenomenon around the piece, and there were people queuing around the block to try and get in. So we revived it later in the year for 1 day, and people came again. I made the white piece after Fall and Recover, and we continue to perform Fall and Recover, and there continued to be a demand and a curiosity about it. I then made another piece called Close-Ups, and not everyone was involved in that, but some people were involved in that. And some people had got jobs or had moved on, and they didn't need to be in the group as much, and they didn't need to, their life had changed, or they were getting married and having kids and moving on. Some of the people who moved on, it was something for them in the past that had been a beautiful thing, but they didn't want to go back anymore, which I fully understood. So I continued to work. We made a film for 2006, Ortiz Dance on the Box, called Bull, and some of the group were in that. I was having a conversation with someone else about the situation, and there was this man there, Dieter Janicke, who was running a festival in Brazil the following year, and he said, could you send me some information on this? I'm running this festival. The next thing, we got an invitation to Brazil, and two of the dancers, one of them still didn't have asylum, but we were able to actually get him a travel document to travel to Brazil. It was extraordinary, and two of the people, can you imagine, they'd been in Ireland for maybe 8 or 9 years and never left the country. They didn't have documents, passports, and suddenly they're going to Brazil. And that was an extraordinary event for us, it felt like such a victory. And then I was evolving with my work and doing more work, and then this magazine in America, Movement Research, that writes about dance, Trajal Harrell, who was one of the editors, he's a choreographer, heard about my work at a conference, and he asked me would I write about it for Movement Research Journal. So I wrote an article that was published in September 2009 in Movement Research Journal in New York. And on that basis, this theatre, La Mama, who I knew and had an association with, asked me, could we bring Fall and Recover to New York for 3 weeks in 2011? And La Mama was founded by this woman, Ellen Stewart, this black woman in New York in the early 60s, and her achievement was extraordinary, and she was very old and very ill and very frail at the time, and was very happy that this was going to happen. And unfortunately Ellen died just before we went there, but when we applied for the work papers to go, because when you go and perform in America you have to get these visas, P1 or P3 visas. There are different types of visas for artists, visiting artists. So we applied, and the way the American immigration system assesses people, you don't write citizenship, you write country of birth. So you might be an Irish citizen, but if you're born in Iran, the computer obviously sees Iran and Iran flashes. So when we applied, and La Mama hosts a lot of international artists, our application was not rejected, but it was sent back for further clarification. And this had never happened before to the office. They had never experienced this. So we tried to find out what was going on, and then when we looked, as we did it, and I learned about how that happens, because there were so many people of different ages and different backgrounds from so many different countries. Some of the countries might be problem countries. Homeland Security computer went crazy. But we provided the clarifications they needed with a description of the piece, and we got letters of support from other American artists and institutions. And the US Embassy here was very supportive as well, and we were all let pass, and we had a wonderful success. The piece was phenomenally received, and for the group to go to America in 2011, the only Western country with a black president and of a Kenyan father, it meant so much